2 years ago, tens of thousands of Afghans fled their country and the Taliban. Utah was one of the first states to reach out to President Biden, offering our state as a haven. As the refugees arrived, it quickly became an extreme situation that ultimately tested our community. A new KSL podcast is telling the stories of some of those refugees, along with those of many Utahns who stepped in to help. I'm with Andrea Smardon. She's the host of Stranger Becomes Neighbor, Afghan Arrivals. Andrea, it's great to meet you.
So glad to be here.
I have to ask maybe the obvious question first, but what drew you to this story or this topic in a way that you felt like it should be told?
Well, when the evacuation happened, I think we were all experiencing this overwhelming desire to help. We saw these terrible, desperate images of people being crushed in the crowds at the Kabul airport, children being separated from parents. And Americans were pretty unified about this. There was 7 out of 10 Americans said we owe it to our Afghan allies to resettle them, especially those who worked with the U.S. military or the American government. And Utah in particular wanted to bring those Afghans here, welcome them into our communities, be a refuge. And so our question was, what does it mean to be a welcoming community? And
what a beautiful question.
And have we delivered?
Have we shown up in the way we wanted to, or we raised our hands and said we would? And when work like that is happening, the in-between stories, those pockets of humanity, that's where the real stories lie, or the real celebration should be focused. You feature one Afghan woman, Andrea, who was a former member of the military. Tell me about her.
Yes, her story is remarkable and can only be told now that she's out of Afghanistan because she was in such danger when she was there. She worked with this special unit of Afghan women soldiers trained by the U.S. to work with the U.S. Special Forces.
Wow.
So they were going on night raids with U.S. Special Forces, raiding Taliban compounds, and their responsibility was to talk to the women and check them for weapons. They could also have suicide vests and weapons. So it was a very dangerous job. It was even dangerous for her to let her neighbors know what she did for work. While she was there, she met her husband, who is also in the military working with Americans. He was killed in 2019 while he was on duty securing elections in Afghanistan. And he was killed while she was pregnant.
That's an amazing story. It's just one of the many stories I know you're sharing on the podcast.
That's right. Yes, we have, what we saw was many people were separated from their families at the Kabul airport. One of them was a 16-year-old girl, and she made it through the airport gates with her 4-year-old niece and her older sister, but they were there without their parents, and then they arrived in Utah during a snowstorm.
We have a clip, a portion of her story. Let's listen.
The first night that we came to Utah, it was a very horrible situation. It was very cold and it was a snowy weather. There was no power, no heat. And this apartment was dark, completely dark. Even I couldn't talk with our caseworker that how we can turn on the heat, how we can turn on the lights. Even we don't have the phone to call him that come here.
Oh my goodness, that's a child. That's a teenager trying to make this adjustment.
Yeah, so alone, so scared. They don't know anyone. They've never been to America. They just don't know what to expect.
I can't imagine. That's one side of the story. On the other side, we have essentially everyday heroes who stepped up to help. What can you tell us about the impact of Utahns who did raise their hands to step up and help these individuals?
Yeah, in the podcast, I really tried to focus on just the regular people who, the friends and the neighbors who stepped in, because it was such an extreme situation. So many people came in such a short time with we had so little resources in that moment to try to resettle them all. So what we saw was just regular people, going into their hotel rooms where they were living temporarily and saying, do you need food? What are you not getting?
Yeah. How can we listen to these stories? How can we listen to your podcast?
Yeah, it's called Stranger Becomes Neighbor. You can find it at kslpodcasts.com or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
I'm grateful for the continuing coverage and the heart that you found in this headline. So I look forward to listening, Andrea. Thank you so much.
So much.